My wife died during childbirth. I found out she cheated, and my son is not mine. I'm going to give him up for adoption. AITA. I'm angry, heartbroken, and don't know where to turn. This is just a huge mess. I'm a 32-year-old man, and I lost my wife last month, just 7 months after she gave birth to our son. She developed peripartum cardiomyopathy, a rare heart condition that sometimes hits after childbirth, and despite all the doctor's efforts, she didn't survive. Losing her has left me in a constant state of grief. 3 weeks ago, her best friend came over to check in on me. She seemed nervous, but I thought maybe she was just still grieving too. Eventually, she told me there was something important I needed to know. After hesitating for a bit, she revealed that my wife had confided in her that she'd been unfaithful around the time our son was conceived, and there was a possibility he might not be mine. I was stunned, confused, and furious. My wife's best friend was telling me this just weeks after my wife's death, and it felt like she was trying to destroy my last memories of her. I told her to leave, convinced that she was lying, or somehow trying to blame me for something. It felt like a betrayal, and I tried to push the thought out of my mind, but it stuck. I couldn't help wondering, what if she was telling the truth? After days of obsessing over it, I decided to do a DNA test. It wasn't an easy choice. I felt guilty even thinking about it, but I needed some kind of closure. Yesterday, the results came back, and it confirmed my worst fear. My son isn't biologically mine. Now I don't know what to do. I wanted so much to believe that he was a piece of my wife and me together, but knowing he's not has left me feeling lost. I keep looking at him, hoping to feel the same connection, but the pain from my wife's infidelity is too fresh, and I don't know if I can move past it. I hate myself for even considering this, but I'm honestly not sure I can raise him alone. The betrayal is overwhelming, and I feel like I might not be able to give him the love and life he deserves. It's tearing me apart, and I feel like a complete failure. AITA. Edit. I didn't think of contacting my wife's friend again, but I might now. Reading everyone's replies has made me realize the child is innocent in all this, but I still don't know if I can give him the love and care he needs. I'll talk to family first and see about finding the other man if I can. Adoption will only be a last resort. I know some might think I'm a monster, but if you could put yourself in my shoes, I hope you'd understand. Edit 2. I called her friend and apologized for my reaction, but I asked why she didn't tell me sooner. She admitted that her loyalty was with her friend more than with me. When I asked about the other guy, she said it was a one-time thing during my wife's work time, whatever that means. Apparently, it happened in the daytime, while I thought she was working. I've seen suggestions to check my wife's phone or social media, but I don't know her passwords. I never doubted her, and we always respected each other's privacy. Next, I'll tell our families, and just to be clear, I don't hate my son, and I'm not just going to throw him out. Whatever happens, I'll follow a careful process. He's just an innocent kid caught in a situation he didn't ask for, and I'm not going to do anything drastic. My wife is treating my son horribly, while I treat her children as my own. She told my son to get away from her children, as she wanted to take photos only with her children. Reddit, should I divorce her? I'm really struggling here, and honestly, it's starting to make me feel like I'm losing my mind. I think I'm being gaslit, so what better place than Reddit to try and get some clarity? Here's the situation. I've been married to my wife for 8 years, and overall, we've had a solid relationship. She has 4 kids from her previous marriage, 2 daughters and 2 sons, aged 11 to 16, and I have a 10-year-old son from my previous relationship. I came into this marriage fully committed to treating her kids like my own. Financially, it's a lot, but I've always been happy to support them. We live together in a 5-bedroom house, and each of her daughters has their own room. Her oldest son has his own room, while her youngest son shares a room with my son. The main issue that's breaking my heart, though, is how she treats my son. It's like he doesn't exist to her. She rarely acknowledges him, almost never asks how he's doing, and mostly treats him like he's just some kid who happens to live here. He's not getting any love or warmth from her at all. I've tried to talk to her, but she brushes it off and claims I'm imagining things. Tonight, we were celebrating her daughter's 11th birthday, and it was supposed to be a happy occasion. We were all gathered around to sing, laugh, and take some family photos. My son was standing there with everyone, and I encouraged him to join in for a group picture. He was excited and smiling, genuinely happy to feel like part of the family. But right after that photo, my wife looked right at him and said, "Get out of the picture, move to the side. I want one with just my kids." It was like a gut punch. I confronted her afterward, telling her that we're supposed to be a blended family and that she needs to treat my son like one of her own. She brushed it off, saying I was overreacting and insisted that it's just a picture. But this isn't just about one photo. She draws these lines constantly, showing my son he's on the outside. And it's not only hurtful to him, it's breaking my heart. For context, my son's biological mom passed away 2 years ago. She was struggling with addiction issues, and while it's listed as COVID complications, her health was in decline for years. My son's been through so much loss already, and he only has my wife as a mother figure now. I worry every day about how this cold treatment from her is affecting him. I don't want to see him broken, feeling like he's unworthy of love, all because he's treated like an outsider in his own home. And it's not just about birthdays or photos. Little things have started piling up. She'll go out of her way to make her kids' favorite meals while conveniently forgetting what my son likes. If he's feeling sick, she'll let me handle it alone, barely even checking in to see if he's okay. She even got her kids matching jackets for winter, and when I asked about getting one for my son, she said it wasn't in the budget. I'm scared that this is going to leave emotional scars on him. I don't know what to do. I thought this was a marriage where we'd build a loving family together, and now I'm left questioning if this is really the environment my son should be in. Am I expecting too much? Should I just let this slide for the sake of keeping the peace, or do I have every right to want her to step up? I'm honestly at my wit's end here, and it kills me to even say this, but I'm seriously planning to file for divorce. This isn't the life I envisioned for my son, and I can't stand by while he's treated this way. My parents gave me $20,000 last year as a gift to buy a house. My dad got fired and decided to move in with me permanently and take control of house. AITA for refusing? Am I ungrateful? About a year ago, I $29 million bought my first home. A huge milestone for me, one I'd worked toward for years. When I shared my plan with my parents, they were supportive and even offered me $20,000 to put toward the down payment, which they assured me was a gift. I was extremely grateful and made sure they knew how much it meant to me. I even invited them over to celebrate when I finally got the keys, and everything seemed great. Fast forward to 3 months ago, and things took a surprising turn. My dad lost his job, which was a big hit to their finances, as my mom's part-time income wasn't nearly enough to cover their expenses. One day, out of the blue, they called me to say they'd be moving in with me until they get back on their feet. There was no discussion, just an announcement. When I hesitated, they quickly reminded me of the $20,000 they'd given me and said it was time to pay them back by letting them stay. This totally blindsided me. That money was always presented as a no-strings-attached gift to help me with the down payment. At no point was there any mention of it being a loan, and I never imagined it would be something they'd use to justify living with me indefinitely. I tried to explain how this was news to me, but they brushed it off, acting as though it had always been part of the deal. I thought about it and tried to meet them halfway. I offered to let them stay temporarily, emphasizing the temporary part, just until they could get things sorted. But they immediately shut that down, saying they'd be moving in indefinitely and expected full access to the house, including taking over my office as their bedroom. They even started suggesting changes I should make around the house, reminding me that they helped pay for it, so they should have a say in how it's run. At this point, I felt completely backed into a corner. I love my parents, and I want to help them, but I'm not comfortable with them moving in and taking over the space I worked so hard to create for myself. This is my first home, my sanctuary, and the idea of giving up my independence indefinitely didn't sit right with me. So I offered to help them out in other ways, covering some of their bills or assisting them financially. But I firmly stated that moving in indefinitely wasn't an option. They didn't take it well. They accused me of being ungrateful and insisted that family is supposed to support each other in times of need. My dad even went as far as to say that because they invested in the house, they're entitled to stay as long as they need. He even hinted at taking me to court over the loan if I didn't let them move in, though I'm pretty sure he was bluffing. The whole situation felt like emotional blackmail. Now, several family members are involved, and most of them think I'm in the wrong. They argue that I'm being selfish and ungrateful, turning my back on my parents after they helped me buy my house. But to me, it feels like they're changing the terms after the fact and expecting me to just go along with it. I'm honestly torn between feeling guilty and feeling like I need to stand my ground. So, AITA for refusing to let my parents move in after they loaned me the down payment? Karen tried to steal my aisle seat and threatened to get the airline staff fired for taking my side. So, I humiliated her publicly and got her deboarded. AITA. So, this happened to my cousin a couple of months ago on a flight from Los Angeles to Chicago with United Airlines. Since he's tall, I'd booked him an exit row aisle seat well in advance and paid extra for it. Everything seemed set for a comfortable flight. But when he boarded and found his row, he was surprised to see someone already in his seat. The entire row was filled, but it was obvious that someone had accidentally taken his spot. Undeterred, he approached the woman sitting in his seat. We'll call her Karen. Cousin, excuse me, I believe this is my seat. Karen, barely glancing up. No, this can't be. I always book the aisle seat. Cousin, maybe you're in the wrong row? Would you mind checking? Karen, sighs dramatically. Look, I'm sure this is my seat. Maybe you made a mistake. Cousin, firmly. Well, my ticket says this is my seat. Perhaps we should ask the flight attendant to help us sort this out. He heads up to the front and explains the situation to a flight attendant, who confirms that, indeed, his seat assignment is correct. Instead of causing a scene, my cousin decides to have a little fun. He returns to Karen with a plan. Cousin, I spoke to the flight attendant and she confirmed this is my seat, but since you're so sure they offered me an upgrade to business class, would you like to switch with me and take the upgrade? Karen, interested. Oh, business class? Really? Cousin, yeah, though personally I prefer the legroom in the exit row. If you want, you can go up front, tell the flight attendant you're taking the business class upgrade meant for the passenger in 15C. Smugly, Karen grabs her bag and heads to the front of the plane, clearly delighted by the upgrade. My cousin takes his seat, finally able to relax, and he soon finds himself chatting with the other passengers in the row. They're relieved. Apparently Karen had been rather disruptive during boarding. He shows them his boarding pass to confirm that he's exactly where he's supposed to be. Now here's the twist. This United Airlines flight didn't even have a business class section. My cousin was well aware of that. So when Karen confidently asks the flight attendant for her upgrade, the attendant looks puzzled, explaining that no such seating exists on this flight. Karen's face drops as she realizes she's been played. Karen storms back, visibly irritated, and starts confronting my cousin. Karen, you lied. You told me there was an upgrade to business class. Cousin, innocently. Are you talking to me? Karen, obviously. You said there was an upgrade. Cousin, shrugging. Why would I do that? I just took the seat assigned to me, 15C. Where's your ticket? A nearby passenger chimes in to confirm that the seat does, in fact, belong to my cousin. The flight attendant, now following Karen back to the row, politely asks Karen to show her boarding pass. Karen rolls her eyes, loudly complaining about incompetent airline staff, and makes a big show of rummaging through her purse, her carry-on, even her coat pockets, all the while huffing about everyone wasting her time. After a few minutes, she finally finds her boarding pass but clutches it tightly, refusing to hand it over. She turns back to my cousin, her voice escalating. Karen, you've embarrassed me in front of everyone here. First, you try to steal my seat, and now you're making a scene. Flight attendant, ma'am, if you could please just show me your boarding pass so we can clear this up. Karen, ignoring the attendant. Do you know how much I fly? I always book aisle seats because I need them. But today I have to deal with some random guy who thinks he can take my seat? At this point, she's getting louder, and nearby passengers are shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Karen's frustration has grown into a full-blown tirade. She begins to accuse the airline of incompetence, blames the flight crew, and continues to insult my cousin, calling him a liar and a cheat. The flight attendant tries to calm her, pointing out that they're causing a delay. But Karen is relentless. She threatens to lodge a complaint that will cost the airline dearly and claims she's a loyal customer who deserves respect. Minutes go by, and passengers start murmuring in frustration, some even checking their watches. Finally, the captain is informed of the delay and comes over to assess the situation. Captain, calmly but firmly. Ma'am, I need to see your boarding pass now, or I'm going to have to ask you to leave the plane. Karen, realizing she's lost control, reluctantly hands her boarding pass over to the captain. He glances at it, then looks back at her with a raised eyebrow. Captain. Ma'am, this boarding pass shows seat 22B. Your seat is 9 rows back, and it's a middle seat. The cabin falls silent as Karen's face goes pale. She tries a final, desperate excuse. Karen. But I can't sit in the middle seat. It's uncomfortable for me. This entire situation has been stressful. Shouldn't I get an upgrade for all this trouble? Captain. Ma'am, you'll need to either go to your assigned seat, or we'll have to ask you to deboard the plane. Frustrated and embarrassed, Karen glares at everyone around her, muttering curses under her breath. She begins gathering her things, her face flushed with anger as she makes her way down the aisle toward her actual seat, 22B. But she doesn't go quietly. She's muttering loudly about terrible customer service and clueless staff, casting hateful looks back at my cousin and the flight crew. As she finally takes her seat, security officers arrive, having been alerted by the crew. They speak with her briefly, and after a tense exchange, they ultimately escort her off the plane amidst relieved sighs from the passengers. My cousin settles comfortably back into his rightful exit row seat, and at last, the flight prepares for takeoff. The whole row shares a laugh about the ordeal. Meanwhile, Karen is left fuming as she's escorted off the flight, and my cousin can finally enjoy the legroom he paid for. My sister-in-law had a miscarriage and was crying at a family dinner. I tried to comfort her, saying I also had 4 miscarriages, so I understood her pain. She accused me of stealing her thunder and grabbing attention during her grief. AITA. I'm 34F, married, and mom to a 1-year-old daughter. My husband and I had a tough journey to parenthood, with 4 miscarriages before our daughter was finally born. I'm beyond grateful that she's here. I generally keep my fertility struggles private, only sharing them with my husband, my parents, and my 2 older sisters. My husband's sister, 31F, whom we love but who often acts like no one struggles as much as she does, recently experienced a miscarriage. She's been open about it on social media and with family, and I've reached out a few times to express my sympathy. I know she's hurting, and I genuinely feel for her. On Saturday night, we went to my in-laws for dinner. My sister-in-law was talking about her miscarriage and how hard it's been. My little girl was sitting on my lap, playing and clearly unaware of the conversation. At one point, my sister-in-law started crying, and my daughter, seeing her aunt upset, wanted to give her a kiss to make her feel better. She always does this when she sees someone sad. I told my sister-in-law that my daughter wanted to give her a kiss, but she responded with a harsh no, and looked visibly annoyed. My daughter looked confused, so I redirected her to give me a big kiss instead. My husband thought this reaction was rude, especially since our daughter was only trying to comfort her aunt. My sister-in-law then said it's painful to see both her brothers with happy, healthy kids when her child is gone. She explained that while she loves her niece, it hurts to be around her because she and her husband are still waiting for their chance. Her comment made me deeply uncomfortable, as I couldn't fathom feeling resentful of my niece or nephew just because of my struggles. She must have noticed my reaction, as she quickly added that we couldn't possibly understand her pain since we hadn't experienced such a loss. I should have stayed quiet, but her assumption was the last straw. I told her we do understand loss, as I had gone through 4 miscarriages myself. I explained that it took us years to finally have our daughter. My mother-in-law, who's compassionate and understanding, hugged me and expressed how sorry she was that I'd been through so much. My sister-in-law, clearly taken aback, asked why I'd never mentioned it. I said that I'm a private person, and I find it difficult to discuss my hardships because I know everyone has their own burdens. Later, my husband told me that his sister had called him, saying she felt I'd been competing with her by mentioning my miscarriages, and was trying to make the conversation about myself when her grief was still fresh. She also accused me of minimizing her loss by saying that everyone has struggles. My husband found her reaction amusing, but I'm left feeling a bit guilty. Maybe it wasn't the right moment to bring up my losses, but her assumption had struck a nerve. My wife is forcing our son to go to conversion camps after he came out as gay. She is ashamed of him and want to fix him. She punched him and physically assaulted him when he refused to go. She also broke my rib when I tried to restrain her. AITA for divorcing her? So this is a really heavy situation, And I'm confused and disgusted, not gonna lie, because I never thought my wife could be like this. My wife, 44F, and I, 45M, have been married for 14 years. We have 2 kids, a 16-year-old son, Noah, and a 12-year-old daughter. We've had our share of disagreements over the years, of course, but generally things have been smooth between us. For some context, Noah came out as gay about a year ago. It was a surprise, and as hard as it was to process initially, I love my kids more than anything and just want them to be happy. My wife, however, didn't take it well. She was visibly upset and went through this weird grieving period where she barely spoke about it. I tried to support Noah however I could, telling him that I loved him no matter what. My wife, though, I could tell she wasn't there. She'd make comments like, "It's just a phase," or "He needs help," but I chalked it up to her needing time. Then, fast forward to last week. We were having a conversation about Noah's future, and out of nowhere, my wife casually mentions that she's been looking into conversion therapy camps. She said she thought it might be the right solution, that Noah wasn't truly gay, and he just needed to be shown the right path to fix him. My blood ran cold. I was in complete shock. I told her immediately that there was no way I could support something so damaging. She got angry and said I was enabling Noah's confusion, and that if I really cared about him, I'd help him get better. It blew my mind. No matter how much I tried to explain that conversion therapy is harmful, like I know those kids end up abused, traumatized, or even taking their own lives, she wouldn't listen. She was stubborn, and I couldn't believe she would even suggest it. To be completely honest, I don't think I love her anymore. The idea that she could be so heartless absolutely disgusts me. Being gay is already hard enough, and people like her make it even harder. I'm thinking of staying, only for our daughter's sake, but would that be right if it means hurting Noah? It feels like a betrayal. I just don't know if I can keep living with someone who thinks this is okay. Update. First off, I just want to thank everyone here for all the advice and support you've given me in comments and DMs. Sorry if I couldn't respond to everyone. There were just way too many messages, which I never expected, but it really helped. My original post was about my wife wanting to send our son to a conversion camp, and it's been a whirlwind ever since. Some of you suggested showing her videos and documentaries about the horrors of those camps. I tried. This argument has been ongoing for over a week now, and I've shown her everything I could find. Nothing got through to her. She refused to budge. So yeah, bad update ahead. A lot of you were right to suggest getting Noah out of the house as soon as possible. I took a day off work yesterday to consult with an attorney about divorce and custody. Honestly, what I found out that day left me with no doubt. I'm getting a divorce and fast. Later in the day, I picked Noah up from school, and we had a serious talk in the car. I told him that his mom and I were likely getting divorced because of her insistence on sending him to a conversion camp and how I couldn't accept that. I made sure he knew this wasn't his fault, and explained that I'd tried to reason with her multiple times. He looked devastated. My heart shattered again, but he was so mature about it. He even thanked me for defending him. I hugged him tight and reassured him that I love him unconditionally, and I always will. Then he started crying, telling me how grateful he was to have at least one parent on his side. What really broke me, though, was when he revealed that his mom had been pressuring him for months. She'd secretly set up dates with girls to try to fix him. He had to lie about going to a friend's house just to escape. She'd even told him he needed help, that being gay was something to be cured. I felt so damn guilty for not noticing sooner. How could I have failed him like that? When we got home, I was furious. I confronted my wife right then and there. At first, she tried to justify herself, claiming it was for Noah's own good. But when I pressed her, the mask slipped. She started spewing slurs, and it became clear she was just ashamed of having a gay son. I told her that I'd seen a lawyer and was planning to divorce her. She lost it, calling me a disgrace, saying I'd been corrupted by our son. Things got heated, and Noah tried to step in and separate us. That's when she lost all control and punched him repeatedly, screaming vile, hateful slurs. My daughter, who had been in her room, came out when she heard the chaos. She was horrified, understandably, and called 911 as I told her to. The police arrived and had to forcefully take my wife away because she refused to believe she'd done anything wrong. She kept shouting that she wasn't to blame. Now I'm sitting in the hospital, My soon-to-be ex-wife broke one of my ribs when I tried to hold her back. I should have come here right away, but my priority was comforting my son. He has a black eye and a split lip, and they're checking him for a concussion. All I could think about was being there for him. I can't imagine how painful it must be to have your own mother attack you just for being who you are. I'm planning to file for full custody, and thankfully, both kids have no desire to see her again. Given the charges she's facing, I'm hopeful she won't stand a chance. I also reached out to my attorney and asked for things to be expedited. I'm even considering getting CPS involved, although I'm not sure how much good it will do at this point. What baffles me is how someone can become so resentful of their own child over something that's completely out of their control. Even I had my struggles coming to terms with it initially, but as a father, it's my duty to love my kids unconditionally. I educated myself and changed my views for the sake of my son. I thought my wife would do the same. Clearly, I was wrong. My family disowned me for marrying a Chinese guy and gave away my inheritance to my golden child brother. Years later, they came back crying to me because my mother is dying and needs money for surgery. My brother became alcoholic and lost everything in gambling and got into huge debts. AITA for not saving my mother and providing shelter for my now homeless family. I'm a 34F, married to my incredible husband James, 36M, and my story is one of bitter realizations and finally standing up for myself. My parents, 63M and 61F, always wanted a boy. They made that abundantly clear from the moment I was old enough to understand. When my younger brother Kyle, 32, came into the world, he was the golden child. Meanwhile, I was just there, the daughter they never really wanted. Our family wasn't rich, but we were middle class, living in a comfortable home. Yet none of that comfort extended to me. My parents were racist and conservative, wrapped up in a white is right mentality that dictated how they viewed the world. It also meant that everything they did revolved around Kyle, and I was constantly pushed aside. I have this vivid memory from when I was 9. My parents had promised me a small birthday party, nothing fancy, just a cake and a few friends over. I was so excited. But the moment the cake was brought out, my parents decided to change the entire purpose of the celebration. Kyle had just gotten an A on his spelling test, and they turned my birthday party into a celebration for his accomplishment. I stood there, trying to smile through the humiliation, but inside I was crushed. It was like I didn't exist. That was my childhood in a nutshell. Kyle was praised for every little thing he did, while my own achievements were brushed off or, worse, turned into criticisms. When I made honor roll in middle school, my dad looked at my report card and said, "That's nice, but you should aim higher." If Kyle scraped by with a passing grade, he was showered with praise and rewards. It was a never-ending cycle that drained me of any sense of self-worth. High school wasn't any better. I remember saving up $500 from babysitting and doing odd jobs around the neighborhood. I wanted to buy myself a laptop for school, something I desperately needed. But before I could even think about spending that money, Kyle announced he wanted to impress his girlfriend with a fancy date. My parents guilt-tripped me into giving up every cent I'd saved. "Family comes first," they said, as if that somehow justified taking my hard-earned money. When I cried, they called me selfish and accused me of trying to ruin Kyle's happiness. That betrayal cut deep. My parents never believed in me. When it came time for college, I had my heart set on going to a university. I'd worked tirelessly, applying for scholarships and even getting accepted into a decent school. But when I asked about my college fund, my parents told me it was gone. Kyle needed it for his future, and I should be grateful to go to community college instead. They said it like it was a favor, like I should be thankful they didn't expect me to just skip higher education altogether. My dreams felt shattered, and I ended up working part-time at a retail store to make ends meet. That job at the store was where my life took an unexpected turn. James started coming in regularly to buy office supplies. He was this kind, charming, and ridiculously handsome guy who just had a way of making my day better. We'd chat every time he came in, and over time, our conversations turned into dates. James, a Chinese man, treated me with a respect and love I'd never experienced. We bonded over our shared experiences, our dreams, and our values. Falling in love with him felt like coming up for air after drowning for years. When he proposed, it felt like a dream, but introducing him to my parents was a nightmare. They took one look at him and their disgust was palpable. My mom even pulled me aside and said, "You're throwing your life away on someone who doesn't even belong here." The racism and hatred in her voice made me sick. My dad declared that I was no longer his daughter and disowned me on the spot. At the same time, Kyle was demanding that my parents transfer the family assets to him. My parents had initially been hesitant, but when I announced my engagement, they saw it as the perfect excuse. Out of pure spite and retaliation, they wrote me out of their will and handed everything, our house, their savings, and any valuable property, to Kyle. It was like the final nail in the coffin of my relationship with them. So, I cut all ties. James and I moved forward, building a life together that was full of love and hope. He inherited his late father's logistics empire, a business worth around $50 million. We worked hard, and over time, we bought a beautiful mansion. I'd never imagined living in a place like that, surrounded by love and safety. Yet, even in the happiest moments, a part of me still felt haunted by the family that had thrown me away. 8 long years went by. 8 years of no contact, no messages, and no involvement in each other's lives. Then, out of the blue, I started getting calls from unknown numbers. At first, I ignored them. But then, one day, I got a voicemail from my dad, sobbing and begging me to talk. My heart raced as I listened, but I deleted the message. I told myself I didn't owe them anything, but the calls kept coming, and my resolve weakened. Eventually, I agreed to let my dad visit. Seeing him again was a mix of emotions. He looked older, more tired, as if the years had beaten him down. His eyes widened as he took in our home, a mansion far more luxurious than anything he'd ever imagined for me. He stammered, clearly shocked by the wealth and success that surrounded me. I asked him what did he want, and why did you come? He sighed, his voice shaking. "Your mother is very sick," he said. "She has a heart condition and needs surgery. We can't afford it." I was shocked to hear that. I asked him, "What happened to all the money you gave Kyle?" My dad's eyes filled with tears. He said that Kyle ruined everything. He got married a few years ago, had a baby, and then he cheated on his wife. She divorced him, took full custody, and the child support payments are killing him. He lost his job 3 months ago, and then he started gambling. He took out loans against the house and lost everything. The bank is evicting us, and we have nowhere to go. I'm working part-time just to buy groceries. Your mother's medication is expensive, and now she needs surgery. I felt nothing when he cried and said those things. I simply told him angrily in a cold tone, "So, you want me to save you?" He nodded, his hands trembling. "Please, we're desperate. Your mother might die." I took a deep breath, and all the old memories came rushing back. Being called selfish for wanting a birthday party, being made to feel worthless compared to Kyle, being told I wasn't good enough. Do you know what it feels like to be 9 years old and realize your parents don't love you? I had enough. I yelled at him, "Do you remember how you stole my future, my college fund, and gave it to Kyle? Do you even care how hard I had to work just to survive?" He started crying. "I'm so sorry. We didn't realize what we were doing." Bullshit. You knew. You just didn't care. I remember coming home from high school graduation, so excited to tell you I'd gotten a scholarship. You didn't even ask how it went. You said it didn't matter because I'd never amount to anything. My dad got on his knees and started crying and said, "We were wrong. We made terrible mistakes. But please, your mother needs you. Save her." James, who had been silently standing beside me, squeezed my hand. His support grounded me, but I could feel the weight of the decision crushing me. "You disowned me because I married James," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and sorrow. "You threw me away because he didn't fit your racist ideals. And now that Kyle's ruined everything, you think you can come crawling back? You don't get to need me now. You made your choice. You chose Kyle. You chose your pride. And you chose to abandon me when I needed you most. I've built a life without you. And I won't let you drag me back into your mess." I told him to leave. I said that I have nothing for you." As he stumbled out of our mansion, I broke down, collapsing into James's arms. The pain, the guilt, the sense of betrayal, all of it came crashing down. I cried until I couldn't breathe, but James held me, whispering that I was strong, that I'd done the right thing. The aftermath was brutal. My phone was flooded with messages from extended family, calling me heartless, accusing me of letting my mother suffer. They told me that family comes first, and that I was a monster for not helping. One cousin even threatened to come to my house and confront me. But for the first time, I stood my ground. I blocked numbers, ignored the guilt tripping, and focused on the life I had built with James. I still think about my parents, about my mom and her heart condition, but I've learned that some people only love you when they need something. They didn't value me when I was a vulnerable child. They only cared when I became useful. James has been my rock through it all. Together, we're planning to start a family, a loving, supportive one where our children will know they are valued. I refuse to repeat the cycle of pain my parents inflicted on me, and in those moments of doubt when the guilt creeps in, James reminds me, I deserve to be happy. I deserve to be loved. Please let me know in the comments if I was wrong to let my mother die. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you liked my story.